The wind on Kestrel 9 was dry and thin. It hissed over the metal roofs and carried the smell of iron dust from the open pits. Evan Cole stood alone on the landing pad and watched the sky turn from orange to violet. The cargo ship was late by 12 minutes. He checked the timer on his wrist again. He told himself that delays were normal. Kestrel 9 sat on the edge of mapped space. Ships missed their marks every week. Still, his heart beat hard. He felt it in his throat like a fist trying to climb out. He had not told anyone what he had done. He had submitted a quiet request through the Off-World Companion Registry. It was legal on some colonies. It was frowned on in others. On Kestrel 9, almost no one cared what you did, as long as you made your ore quotas and kept the drills running. Evan was a good miner. He hit numbers. He paid his debts. He never caused trouble. He also ate alone. He walked alone. He slept in a room that felt too big, even though it was only the size of a shipping container with a bed welded to the wall. The application had asked him many questions. What did he want? What did he fear? Did he prefer quiet or noise? Did he need someone to talk or someone to listen? The form felt like a mirror he did not want to look into. He answered anyway. He pressed submit. The registry AI approved his match in 9 minutes and charged him for shipping, health screen, and legal bond. He waited 3 weeks. He cleaned his room twice a day. He bought real coffee from a trader who sold lies and sugar. He did not sleep well. Now the ship cut into the sky like a knife through cloth. The landing pad hummed as the magnetic clamps powered up. A cone of light touched the ground and threw long shadows behind him. Evan wiped his palms on his jacket. He stood tall. He was not handsome. He was average height with dark hair and a straight, tired face. He had a small scar under his left eye from a drill bit that jumped its track years ago. He did not try to hide it. It was the only honest mark he owned. The ship touched down with a deep, slow thud. Dust moved outward in a ring and then rose around the hull like fog. Evan waited for the ramp. He knew how this should go. A human escort should come first with a tablet. The escort would check his ID, make him sign, and read the terms in a dry voice. Then the matched person would appear. There would be a small smile. An awkward hello. Maybe a handshake. 2 people trying to be polite in a strange moment. The ramp dropped. There was no escort. A tall shadow stood at the top. It filled the doorway. It was not human. It was too wide, too still, and the posture was wrong. Balanced more like a tree than a person, as if its legs rooted into the deck. The figure stepped forward. Light hit metal, armor. The surface was not any metal Evan knew. It had a living sheen as if it breathed. The plates were smooth and grown, not forged. The figure ducked under the doorway and came down the ramp with slow care. Each step made a soft bell sound, not a clank. The head turned once to the left and once to the right, searching the horizon, and then lowered to look at him. She removed the helmet. For a moment, Evan forgot to breathe. The face was not human, but it held shape and symmetry that his mind reached for like a rope. The skin was pale silver with a faint blue undertone, not paint, not plating, skin. The eyes were large and clear, with an iris that shimmered like the edge of oil on water. The hair, if it was hair, fell in heavy, dark strands that glowed along each edge as if catching starlight from inside. She stood more than twice his size, shoulders broad and strong, yet her jaw trembled as if she was cold. Evan Cole? Her voice had a low, chime-like tone. There was an accent he had never heard, each syllable placed with care. Yes, he said at last. His voice came out thin. He cleared his throat. Yes, I'm Evan. She closed her eyes for a second. Relief touched her mouth. I am Lyra, she said. Of Nyrith. She looked up at the sky again. The whites of her eyes were not white. They were deep gray like winter sea. We must go now, Evan blinked. We need to sign papers. The escort? There is no escort. She looked back to the ship. The hull panels flexed like skin. He thought he saw the faint pulse of light moving along a vein. There is only danger. He felt the old habit rise in him. Tell the other person it will be fine even when it is not. He swallowed it. Danger from what? Lyra stepped down the last meter, hit the pad, and the ramp groaned under the shift in weight. Up close, Evan could see the armor was cracked at one shoulder. Dark blue blood, or fluid, had dried in a thin line along the seam. She leaned closer to his height and said, softer, "From the ones who sent me." The ship's ramp began to rise on its own. No crew appeared. No cargo drones. The engines did not spin up. The hull simply throbbed once like a giant heart, then went still. The ramp sealed with a hiss. Evan stared at the closed door. He felt the wind press against his back as if the whole planet had leaned closer to listen. "Come," Lyra said. She looked past him to the low ridge of miner housing and the tower where the colony's local AI watched over power and air. "Hide me. Hide you?" He laughed once, a short, wrong sound. She was enormous. "You could hide a coin. You could hide a knife. You could not hide a mountain." "From who?" Lyra's eyes flicked up. Something long and thin moved across the sky, high and silent, too fast for a shuttle, too smooth for a meteor. A sensor ray, Evan thought. A scout, the hair on his arms rose. He felt small under the open sky and the violet edge of evening. "Please," she said. The word had weight. It bent his thoughts. He nodded. He did not understand any of this, but he knew fear when he saw it. He knew the difference between a liar and someone who had run out of lies. He turned and led her off the pad, across the gritty yard and into the service lane that ran behind the housing blocks. The lane was too narrow for her width. She angled her shoulders and moved in a liquid, careful way, making herself smaller than she had any right to be. The metal walls of the lane carried their footsteps like drums. Evan tried not to flinch at every echo. At his door, he keyed in the code. The lock was old. It took a second try. The door slid open into a single room. Bed, sink, locker, a small table that folded down from the wall, one window set high. He had cleaned it so hard the metal smelled like lemon solvent. On the table sat 2 cups and a bag of coffee. Lyra had to duck low to enter. The door scraped her back. He winced at the sound. She stood in the middle of his life and filled it. And for the first time since he had moved in, the room did not feel too big. It felt too small, too short, too low. Her presence bent the space. He shut the door. He turned and found her watching him the way soldiers watch a battlefield, every detail measured. She reached to her shoulder plate and pressed a hidden latch. The seam opened with a faint sigh. She pulled the plate free and set it quietly on the floor. Beneath the armor was a deep bruise the size of a dinner plate, purple and black swimming toward blue. The sight pushed a sound from his mouth. He stepped forward without thinking. "I can get water," he said. "Bandages. I have a med kit. It's basic, but—" Lyra lifted one hand, palm out. "Later." She looked to the window. "Shields?" "No shields," he said. "Just a lock and a camera that does not work. The local net died last month when we rerouted power to the south drills." She breathed in once through her nose, slow. Her nostrils flared. "Then we are clear for a short time." She knelt, which brought her face nearer to his. The floor creaked. "Evan Cole, the registry did not pick me for you. Your name was taken from a list." The list was taken from a census. It was a lie built on a lie. "I was sent as punishment. But I ran, and now they will come to erase the lie." He tried to find words that made sense and did not find any. "Why me?" Her gaze softened. "Because you live far away from help. Because you live alone. Because you have no family here and no one will ask about you if you vanish." She said it with the quiet of someone who had studied him. He felt naked, not in body, but in the small private places he hid from himself. "And," she added, "because you are kind." He shook his head. "You don't know that. I know enough." She shifted and the armor whispered. "On the way, I listened to your voice in the registry interview. You were careful. You said you did not need laughter, but you missed the sound of a human spoon against a second cup. You asked for simple mornings. You asked for someone who would stay." He felt heat rise in his face. He had forgotten he had said those things. He had not meant to. They had slipped out because the AI had sounded like no one. "Lyra," he said, "if they come, we can call Colonial Security." "We can—" "No," she said. "Security will fail. The ones who hunt me are not pirates. They are reclaimers. They will say I am stolen property. They will speak in legal code and bring a document stamped with 20 seals. They will be polite as they kill us both." The room went very quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause at the door. Evan could hear his own heart again, that fist at his throat. He realized that the decision had already climbed past his logic and stood in his hands. "Then we don't let them in," he said. Lyra's mouth twitched at the corner. Not a smile. "Something like agreement. There is a way to hide me," she said. "Not in walls. Not underground. They will scan for heat and movement and shape. But there is a place they do not scan because they think it is impossible." "Where?" She touched her chest, then reached toward him. He stood still. Her hand was very large. He thought it might crush his bones. Instead, she pressed her fingertips gently over the left side of his chest, just above the place where his scar lay. The touch was warm. His skin prickled. "In here," she said. "Not in your body. In your name. In your papers. In the net of your laws. If we bind our names, the reclaimers must go to court, not to war. They fear court. They cannot aim a cannon at a judge." Evan blinked. "Bind our names? You mean, in your language," she said, searching for the word. "Marriage." The word felt strange in her mouth. He realized with a start that the registry's title had not been a lie in that one thin way. "Your colony respects spouse rights, even for off-worlders. If you claim me, I am not cargo. I am person. They must argue. Talking takes time. Time lets us move." He looked at the door, the window, the bed, the cups. He looked at her armor plate on his floor. He thought of the last 5 years, days that ran like gray water, hours that did not stick, a life that made no mark. "Okay," he said. He surprised himself with how quickly the word came. "Okay, we do it. We must do it now," Lyra said. "Before the scan net tightens." Evan pulled the table down. He woke the terminal. The screen flickered in the dim room and threw a square of cold light on both their faces. His fingers shook as he opened the civil registry. The system asked for ID, then for proof of residency, then for a reason, then for a witness. He swore. "We need a witness." Lyra tilted her head. "Your local AI? It's offline." He chewed the inside of his cheek. "But the drill supervisor's assistant runs on independent power. It's stupid, but it can sign. It thinks it's a parrot." He tapped a back door he had used once to request extra water rations during a heat spike. The assistant woke with a cheerful tone and asked 3 nonsense questions about safety and community, then stamped the form. Evan filled in Lyra of Neareth in the partner field. The system asked for a biometric. He looked at Lyra. "Finger?" She nodded. Her finger was wider than his thumb. The scanner complained, then accepted. The registry paused. The screen turned deep blue. For a second, Evan thought they had tripped some alarm. Then the words appeared. "Bond provisional. Pending human confirmation." Final box blinked. "Do you accept responsibility for Lyra of Neareth as spouse under colonial law?" He pressed accept. The terminal chirped. The bond filed into the net like a small brave bird. Evan exhaled. Lyra sat back on her heels and something in her posture eased. One rope cut among many. A siren rose outside. Not the colony siren. A new sound. Higher, thinner, running along the spine, not the ears. Lyra turned toward the door. The window went briefly dark as a shadow crossed it. Evan killed the terminal light and the room fell into gray. "What is that?" he whispered. "Their scanner," she said. "They found the ship's trail. They will follow heat and breath and heartbeat." She looked down at him. The strange glow in her eyes grew a shade brighter. "Don't be afraid." "I am afraid," he said. "Yes," she said. "Be afraid. But move anyway." They moved. Evan pulled the storage panel under the bed open. He threw out a coil of cable and a bag of old boots. He motioned. Lyra shook her head. "Too small." She pointed to the ceiling. "Is there crawl space?" He nodded. He had never used it. The hatch was near the window. He popped it and metal flakes rained down. The space above was dark and cramped. He did not know how she would fit. She reached up and pressed the edges. The panels bowed. The armor on her back flowed like liquid and thinned. She pulled herself up with silent strength. For a moment her face hovered above him, close enough that he could see a tiny scar along her jaw, like a star cut into skin. "Evan Cole," she whispered. "Stay near the door. If they knock, you answer. Speak like a man who owns this place. Speak like a spouse." "What do I say?" "The truth," she said. "Say your wife is resting. Say she is ill. Say she is angry at uninvited guests. The details do not matter. The shape matters." He nodded. His mouth was dry. He closed the hatch as carefully as he could. The room was quieter with her above, and at the same time it was not quiet at all. He could feel her weight in the beams. He could feel his own voice shaking in his chest. The knock came not with fists, but with a coded ping at the lock, polite, cold, official. He walked to the door and pressed the intercom. "This is Evan Cole," he said. His voice was flat at first, then steadier. "Who is it?" A voice answered with perfect grammar and no warmth. "Colonial Inspections. We tracked a misfiled cargo arrival. We require a viewing of your premises." His hand hovered over the open switch. He thought of Lyra's eyes and the strange bell sound of her steps. He thought of the word he had just pressed. Accept, he set his shoulders. My spouse is resting, he said. We are not receiving visitors, a pause. Then, we were not asking. Evan looked at the window's thin sliver of sky. A second shadow slid over it, then a third. He placed his palm against the door. He could hear the systems waking on the other side. They would try his code next. They would cut the power after that. They would enter. He took one step back. He reached for the heavy wrench he kept by the bed, not because it would help much, but because it made weight in his hand and weight made courage. Above him, a faint whisper, the smallest scrape of Lyra's armor against the beam. She was there. He was not alone. They will come for me, she had said on the pad. Now, as the lock clicked and the lights flickered, Evan found a calm place inside the fear. It was not big. It was enough. He lifted the wrench. He squared his stance. And as the door began to open, he said, clear and steady, My wife is not to be disturbed. The door slid 3 centimeters. A narrow beam of white light cut across the floor like a blade. Part 1 ended there, with the blade of light and the beating of 2 hearts, one human, one not, waiting for the next move. The door slid wider, light spilling into the room like a blade. 3 figures stood outside. Their suits were dark silver, smooth and jointless as if molded from one piece. Their faces were hidden behind black glass masks that showed no eyes, no mouth, just reflections. The tallest one held a small device that hummed with a low rhythmic sound. Evan stood still, gripping the wrench tighter. His voice came out dry. You're not from Colonial Inspections. The middle figure tilted its head. We are authorized reclamation agents, the voice said. It was male but not human. It echoed oddly, like 2 people speaking together. You have received a misdelivered unit belonging to the Neareth Dominion. Surrender it and we will leave without harm. Evan's pulse pounded in his neck. He felt the faint vibration in the ceiling beams above him. Lyra's slow, controlled breathing. He couldn't let them know. There's no unit here, he said. Only me and my wife. The lead figure paused. Your wife? The voice stretched the word as if tasting it. Registered under what name? Evan swallowed. Lyra Cole, check your registry. The figure raised the device. A light flickered across the room, scanning walls, furniture, even his face. Then the light stopped on him and beeped. Record shows pending marriage license, the agent said. Status filed 6 hours ago. Interesting. Evan tried to sound bored. Not that interesting. Paperwork is slow here. The agent leaned forward. We can remove her quietly. You can keep the credit deposit. Tell the colony office she chose to leave. Evan said nothing. The silence stretched like a rope between them. He could feel the air trembling. The other 2 agents shifted behind their leader. Finally, Evan forced a shrug. You want coffee? We can talk like civilized people. For 1 second, he thought maybe the agent would laugh, but the black mask didn't move. Instead, the man said, Refusal noted. The door hissed shut. He heard metal footsteps retreating down the corridor. Then came the sound of static, like hundreds of tiny radios tuning at once. The noise grew sharper, turning into a whistle that made his ears hurt. Evan ran to the window. Out across the mining field, lights flickered. Dozens of ships, small needle-like crafts, were descending, each glowing with a red underbelly. They weren't landing. They were surrounding. Lyra dropped from the ceiling with a soft thud. She was already moving toward the armor plate she had left on the floor. Her voice was low but calm. They found me. Evan turned to her. Who are they? The Reclaimer fleet, she said, fastening the armor. They belong to the Dominion. They erase what the Emperor calls corrupted bloodlines. I am one of them. I was born for war, but I turned against it. Evan tried to understand. You're saying you're, what? A soldier? Lyra nodded once. An engineered warrior, created to conquer worlds. But I learned what conquest costs. I refused my last order. She looked out the window. They won't stop until I'm gone. The colony sirens began to wail, long, broken notes that echoed through the canyons. Over the radio network, static turned into voices shouting about incoming hostiles, breached perimeters, and power grid failures. Evan grabbed his pack and the small tool pistol he kept under the bed. We have to move. They'll come back. Lyra didn't answer right away. She stood still, head tilted, listening. "They are not scanning for me anymore," she said. "They are scanning for us both. The bond you filed links us. The registry marked you as part of me." He froze. "So they'll come for me too?" "Yes," she said. "You are no longer invisible." The words hit like a hammer. He looked at her massive frame, the calm determination in her alien eyes, and realized there was no way to turn back. "Then we run together," he said. She gave a single nod, then lifted a piece of her armor and pressed it to his chest. The metal stretched and reshaped itself, forming a light protective layer around his torso. "It will absorb low-level plasma fire," she said. "Do not test it against anything larger." Evan almost smiled. "Got it." They moved into the corridor. The power flickered, leaving the hall bathed in red emergency light. Shadows jumped on the walls as they passed. Outside, the night was alive with motion. Ships hovered like dark birds over the colony domes. Searchlights swept across the sand. Evan followed Lyra through the narrow alleys between buildings, heart pounding in his ears. They reached the mining pit elevator. Lyra smashed the control box with her fist and forced the cage door open. The old lift groaned but began to descend. "Where are we going?" he asked. "The tunnels," she said. "They can't use scanners underground. Too much metal interference." The lift rattled deeper and deeper. When it stopped, they stepped into darkness lit only by the glow from Lyra's armor. The air smelled of dust and machine oil. Evan spoke softly. "How long have you been running?" "Since the rebellion on Nearith," she said. "I freed prisoners the Emperor wanted executed. Humans among them, humans." She nodded. "We fought beside your kind once. The Dominion broke that alliance. They feared you. You spread too fast. You think too different, so they chose to erase you. I refused." They walked farther into the tunnels. The sound of distant explosions rolled through the ground like thunder. Evan's voice shook slightly. "You saved humans before. That's why they punished you." "Yes," Lyra said. "They sent me here under false orders, marked as cargo. They thought isolation would finish me." Evan stopped walking. "So you were never meant to be a bride?" Her face turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly. "No, but the registry gave me a name and you gave me a choice. That makes it real." Before he could answer, the tunnel lights flared white. Something roared behind them. A drone had found the elevator shaft. It dropped fast, metal wings slicing the air. "Move!" Lyra shouted. They ran. The drone fired a beam that burned a molten line through the rock wall. Dust and sparks exploded around them. Evan stumbled, caught himself, and kept running. Lyra turned, lifted her hand, and a pulse of blue light shot from her armor. The drone shattered mid-air and fell smoking to the ground. Evan stared. "You didn't tell me you could do that." She glanced back. "You didn't ask." They ran until the tunnel opened into a wide cavern filled with old machinery. Abandoned drills and conveyor belts stood like dead beasts. Lyra stopped beside a rusted console. "This is a relay station," she said. "If I reach the surface tower and connect this crystal..." She took a glowing shard from a pocket in her armor. "It will send a pulse strong enough to disable their ships." Evan frowned. "You can stop them?" "For a while," she said. "But the crystal needs a carrier link. I must reach the surface. You must guide me. Human systems reject my signal." He looked around the cavern. There was one exit, a service shaft leading upward. "That's a long climb." Lyra smiled slightly. "Then start." They climbed. Metal rungs were cold under Evan's hands. Above them, the shaft rose hundreds of meters. Lyra moved effortlessly, her massive body graceful even in the narrow space. When they reached the top, she pushed open the hatch. Cold night air poured in. They emerged onto a ridge overlooking the colony. Fires burned below. The sky was alive with movement. Dozens of Dominion ships in formation. Evan whispered, "They're everywhere." Lyra crouched beside him. "They're not looking for us yet. Their scanners are aimed at the shipyard. That gives us minutes." They sprinted toward the relay tower, a tall, thin structure jutting from the rock. The ground shook as a ship fired plasma rounds into the colony's defense cannons. Halfway up the hill, a group of drones spotted them. Red beams lit the darkness. Lyra raised her arm and shouted, "Down!" Evan dove behind a rock. Plasma bolts scorched the air. Lyra charged forward, swinging a piece of metal pipe she'd ripped from the ground. She struck one drone mid-flight. It exploded in a burst of fire. Two more came at her. She leapt, twisting mid-air, and smashed them into the dirt. Evan stared in disbelief. She moved like thunder in a human shape. Then he realized one drone had slipped past her, coming straight for him. He aimed his tool pistol. His hand shook, he fired. The beam hit the drone's sensor and it crashed into the rock, smoking. Lyra turned, saw what he had done, and nodded. Good shot. They reached the tower base. The door was sealed by code. Evan connected his wrist console, overriding the lock with mining credentials. You have 10 seconds. 10 is enough. Lyra stepped inside and slammed the crystal into the relay core. The tower's light surged to life, throwing blue fire into the air. A deafening hum filled the valley. The Dominion ships above began to flicker, their engines faltering. Evan looked up. It's working. Lyra's face tightened. Not for long. Outside, the lead ship redirected all power toward the relay tower. A beam of pure energy lanced down from the sky. Lyra grabbed Evan and threw him behind a support pillar as the tower exploded. The ground shook. When the smoke cleared, the ships in the sky were falling back, retreating toward orbit. The relay tower burned, half collapsed. Lyra lay near the wreckage, armor cracked and smoking. Evan crawled to her side. Lyra, say something. She smiled faintly, a ghost of warmth in her eyes. We did it, she whispered. For now. He tried to lift her, but the armor was too heavy. We have to move. There'll be more coming. She reached up, touched his cheek with one trembling hand. Evan Cole, she said softly, if I fail, promise me you'll run. You're not failing. He said, but her voice faded. The glow in her armor dimmed.